December 9, 1940. Cyrenaica, Western Egypt. Before dawn, the desert is a furnace gone out, cold enough to see your breath in the dark. The horizon is a bruise of gray-blue as men of the 7th Royal Tank Regiment tighten scarves against the chill. Around them, engines cough awake one by one, diesel throats turning frost to dust. Captain Sidney "Sid" Robinson crouches beside his tank, a machine that looks almost stunted by the standards of modern war, short-barreled gun, slab sides, boxy turret, but its weight presses the sand like a battleship on land. On the hull, faint white numbers mark it as B-37 from C Squadron, 7th RTR. It's an infantry tank Mark II, the Matilda, 78mm of armor plate that even British mechanics half-jokingly call indestructible. Robinson runs a hand along the glassy plate, knuckles tracing paint chipped by sandstorms. The steel is cold, thick as a man's forearm in places. Its heart is slow, 2 bus engines coupled in tandem, but its skin is almost invincible. He lights a cigarette and watches the dawn. "So this is Compass," he mutters. "Let's see if the old girl can dance." Operation Compass. The first British counterattack against Graziani's Italian 10th Army. Across the flat sea of sand behind Mersa Matruh, Wavell's Western Desert Force has gathered 31,000 men, 275 tanks, and the hope of washing 6 months of retreat out of Egypt's memory. The 7th RTR and its Matildas are the hammer. In the weak sun, the tanks form up, platoons of squat beasts in desert yellow and khaki green stripes. Crews climb into their steel houses, hatches clanging shut with a sound that will soon define the desert war, thick, armored finality. At 7 o'clock hours, engines throttle up. The desert reverberates. In Squadron Sergeant Major Bill Story's vehicle, the gunner, Lance Corporal Fred Lewis, looks through his sight at the distant Italian wire. Low fences, blockhouses, sandbagged guns dug in along the Nibewa camp perimeter. The Italians, more than 20,000 strong, believe their positions unassailable. They have no idea the British are already behind them. Robinson checks the signal from his wingman's tank, an Aldous lamp flash cutting the haze. Ready. He presses the microphone key. Move out. 50 Matilda IIs lurch forward, crushing sand crust beneath 40 tons of armor and grit. Their movement is ponderous but purposeful, like an army of bulldozers marching to war. Behind them follow Bren carriers and the infantry of the 4th Indian Division, boots trailing ghosts of dust. 2 miles on, Italian sentries spot the shapes and sound the klaxon. Guns flare, 47mm anti-tank pieces spewing tracer that ricochets off the Matilda's turtleback hulls and sprays of wasted sparks. They're bouncing. Lewis yells over intercom static. A shot hits their driver's visor. The noise sounds like a church bell rung in their faces. Inside, sweat joins red dust. Robinson steadies his throat mic. "Gunner, 2 o'clock that bunker, he." Lewis swings the 2-pounder. The gun slams, brass shell casing clinking against steel. The bunker doors vanish in a puff of sand and splinters. The Italians fire again and again but nothing bites deep. For the first time since Mussolini's divisions crossed the Libyan border, British armor doesn't die at the first shot. It doesn't die at all. Frontline reports later describe what the Italians saw. Tanks they thought were toys grinding through perimeter wire, flame and gravel spraying from shattered emplacements, shells bursting against hulls that refused to yield. The desert rang with ricochets and disbelief. Inside the Italian command post at Nibewa, General Pietro Maletti, spectacles fogged, radios headquarters. "They are small, slow tanks, yes, but immune. Our guns cannot stop them." By 8:30, Matildas have breached the camp, guns and bayonets sweeping barack tents and trenches. The regiment's radio net crackles not with panic but momentum. Nibewa secured. Moving west. The sun is higher now, heat shimmering off armor plates already scarred and white-edged from impact. The Matildas crawl across the plain, methodical as executioners. Italian trucks burn where the 2-pounders found them. Gunners abandon weapons that may as well be flintlocks for all the use they're worth. Captain Robinson climbs halfway out of his turret for a better look. From here, the battlefield resembles a scrapyard of another empire's overconfidence, burned camps, tents twisted into braids. His tank crew beams. "Looks like the old girl won the morning," says the driver, Private Joyce, wiping his forehead with a sleeve. Robinson nods once. "Let's see how she handles an afternoon." But the Italians aren't finished, they're falling back. Ahead lies Tummer, deeper into Cyrenaica, where the 7th RTR will strike again before sunset. What none of them want to admit just yet is how far they're moving on instinct, not supply lines. Fuel and shells are finite, courage is the currency now. At 1500 hours, the Matildas advance through new wire, Italian machine guns chattering desperately. Parked anti-tank tractors fire until their barrels glow, but everything they throw rebounds in fountains of sand. By dusk, British signal operators count prisoners in the thousands, whole companies surrendering without a fight once they hear the growl of engines returning from Nibewa. That night, the men of 7th RTR eat cold rations atop their blackened armor, desert wind cutting through sweat-soaked uniforms. Under the stars, the Matildas rest without camouflage or fear, glinting metal guardians over a sea of shattered camps. One gunner chuckles low. So much for the Italians' invincible empire. They can't even scratch the paint. In Cairo, where news filters back days later, staff officers toast Wavell's success. In Rome, disbelief curdles into panic. And in Berlin, where Hitler's generals glance at communiques from the Afrika Corps still forming, a sardonic voice behind a cigar murmurs, We shall see if those English toys bounce when they meet a real gun. December 10, 1940. Dawn drags itself over the Libyan frontier in hues of copper and sandstorm gray. The Matildas have not cooled since Nabewa. Their armor still smells of cordite and scorched paint. Overnight, the 7th Royal Tank Regiment's mechanics have scraped desert dust off tracks clogged with melted brass and human debris, fed oil to thirsty engines, and patched what the Italians could not penetrate. Out beyond the fading starlight, Tummer West lies half buried in the dunes. A fortified camp bristling with 47mm guns and heavy machine positions pointed the wrong way. Intelligence intercepts were right. The Italians still believe British armor has stopped at Nabewa. At 6:45 the silence breaks. Over the radio, Major Geoffrey Bosleyon's voice is calm but sharp. Matildas forward. Cruise speed 2 miles an hour. Cut your silhouettes. Engines grumble awake. The horizon trembles as 37 tanks rumble loose from their desert camouflage. Their single aim point is the southern trench line, invisible in the morning glare. The air is dry enough that every clatter of track links carries for miles. Inside his tank, Captain Robinson listens to the grinding of the right drive sprocket and hopes it will hold through another day of hell. His gunner, Fred Lewis, peers through his sight. Range 900, sir. Something's moving. He squeezes off a round. The 2-pounder shell cuts clean through an Italian truck loaded with ammunition. The blast throws sand like shrapnel. Infantry pour from dugouts, finding too late that the approaching tanks aren't rumors but iron realities. Italian artillery opens up, sporadic at first, then frantic. Shells burst around the British advance, black smoke without bite. Against 78mm of cast armor, nothing short of a miracle can save them, and miracles are rationed in the desert. Every hit rings through the hull like a hammer on an anvil but leaves no wound. The tank lurches through craters, steady, persistent. Fred Lewis grins inside his respirator. Bounce right off her. Like marbles on a shed wall. Robinson smacks the turret rim. Keep firing. Let him know she's still coming. High explosive shells tear through trench lines, gutting machine nests. Matilda tracks grind straight over collapsed bunkers, splitting the seams where concrete meets sand. Behind them, the infantry of the 4th Indian Division follows close, bayonets gleaming, moving in the steam of crushed soil. At Tummer, the tempo feels unstoppable. 1 hour. 2. Italian units vanish under the onslaught. When British troopers finally breach the camp center, the defenders throw down rifles and raise trembling hands. From the air, RAF Lysanders circle the battlefield, their crews radioing disbelief. Message to HQ, enemy positions neutralized, armor practically undamaged. By midday, the terrain around Tummer smolders with diesel fires. Prisoners pile in hundreds, eyes darting to the squat monsters parked like small iron houses under the shade of parachute tarps. Colonel Remington, commanding 7th RTR, drinks water from a sand-grimy canteen and glances at the captured guns. Poor devils, he says quietly. They never stood a chance. Somewhere back at British Brigade HQ, Wavell receives the first reports from the front. 4 fortified camps fall in 2 days, thousands of Italians captured, heavy guns taken intact. He turns to his operations officer, lips thin. It seems the Matilda is a queen among pawns. Across the Mediterranean, Italian dispatch offices spin another story. Claims of heroism, delaying actions, temporary withdrawals. But for Italian troops north of Sidi Barani, the truth is in the air. The smell of fuel, sand baked to glass by armor heat, and the sound of an engine note that means surrender. At 1500 hours, Robinson's tank joins the column pushing toward the coast road linking western Egypt to Tobruk. The Matildas advance in the open, their commanders heads up through turrets, trusting the armor with their lives. The desert wind scours paint off fenders, turns the hulls pale, almost white with dust. It's madness, sir, Lewis says. We're too slow to run away from anything if it turns up. Robinson smiles without mirth. That's all right. We don't run anymore. Over the next weeks, Operation Compass becomes a march rather than a battle. Between December and February, the Matildas crush one Italian position after another. Bardia, Tobruk, Derna, finally Beta Fam, each name a step deeper into German headlines that begin to sound alarmed. 130,000 Italian prisoners. British casualties shockingly low. The Matilda's legend solidifies not in theater halls or papers but among its crews. They name their tanks like lovers: Phantom, Grendel, Alice, Queen of the Desert. Inside each, the same ritual: check coolant, swig lukewarm tea from jerrycans, fire, advance, repeat until victory or the gearbox dies first. By March 1941, the desert belongs briefly to the Union Jack. But the Empire's momentum breeds its own shadow. At Tripoli, new uniforms disembark: Feldgrau, black-jacketed tank men under a spare, hawk-eyed general named Erwin Rommel. Among the equipment rolling down those docks is something the Allied reports barely mention: anti-aircraft guns hastily rechambered to serve a grim new purpose. The Matilda, once unstoppable, will soon meet the weapon born to undo it. April 1941. The desert wind changes, stiffer, carrying the salt of the Mediterranean and the scent of diesel that doesn't belong to the Royal Armored Corps. Across North Africa, a new column of vehicles rolls east from Tripoli, the newly arrived Deutsches Afrika Korps. Among them, towed behind half-tracks and Krupp trucks, are weapons that started life as anti-aircraft guns: long-barreled, high-muzzled 8 centimeters flak 30 SIXS. The gunners who man them swagger less than the tank men, but their commander, General Lieutenant Erwin Rommel, knows exactly what those weapons can do. Against planes they kill at 5 kilometers, he tells an aide. Against tanks, well, let the British learn. The British have learned only victory. At Mersa Briga and Aguila, they move as they always have since Compass. Steady confidence, Matildas advancing like steel mortars on tracks, crew hatches open to the sun. They expect Italians again, shaken, surrendering. But the new enemy fires differently. April 4, 1941. A flat basin west of El Aguila. Captain Robinson's Matilda, still painted with the scars of Operation Compass, idles forward, dust haloed around its tracks. The scouts had reported enemy armor at the wadi edge, likely L3 tankettes. Robinson stifles a yawn, calls over intercom, "Keep your gears low, Fred. Let's finish this and be home by tea." 3 minutes later, the crack of an unfamiliar gun splits the desert soundscape. Not the whip bang of a 47mm, nor the faint thump of mortar. This one slams the air apart, leaving an aftershock you can taste in your chest. Robinson feels the impact before he hears it. The Matilda rocks sideways, a metallic shriek tearing through the right hull. The crew freeze. The armor that once scoffed at Italian fire now blossoms inward like peeled tin. "Hit, starboard side," yells Lewis. Smoke pours through the driver's vent. Return fire. He doesn't know where to shoot. There's no visible tank, just flashes on a distant rise. The second round lands lower, below the turret ring and tears through hydraulics. The turret seizes, black fluid floods the floor. Robinson grips the mic. They've got something bigger. What they have is Rommel's 88s, retooled anti-aircraft killers dug into concealed pits behind screens of scrub. The British spotters see the telltale flash and know it instantly. Flame too long, recoil too slow. One artillery sergeant whispers, "That's not a 47. That's a gun from hell." Across the line, Rommel stands half exposed on a command car, binoculars level. "Hold your fire," he had told his battery leader. "Wait until they close to 1,000 meters. Then 3 rounds per gun." Now he watches as shell bursts hammer the advancing Matildas, black clouds throwing sand like surf. At Mersa Briga the myth fractures. Matilda II, the slow but invincible guardian of Compass, suddenly looks ancient. Her 2-pounder has no high explosive shell. Her crews cannot reach infantry or gun nests. The 88s, by contrast, fire a 2-foot shell at 2,600 feet per second. The rounds that once dropped bombers now spearing clean through British steel. By 11:30, 7 Matildas burn in a neat semicircle. One sits on its side, turret blown off. The rest are crippled but eerily intact, armor pierced like spear wounds on a whale. Robinson's tank sputters, one track shredded. He signals to bail, but Lewis refuses, still gripping the coaxial machine gun. "Not yet, sir," he yells, firing at the horizon though he can't see the target. The gun answers him anyway, an 88mm round through the mantlet. The crew never knows the hit. Later, during recovery operations, a British sapper touches the entry point in the Matilda's side. The hole as smooth as a drill's, the inner plates curled outward. "So that's what beat the Queen," he mutters. Back at Axis headquarters, Rommel scribbles in his diary, "Our eight guns have proved decisive. The British tank, previously so feared, is now powerless before us." In Cairo the news arrives with disbelief. Compass's triumph turns into reappraisal. Intelligence officers reread after-action reports. Burned out Matildas found hull down, their armor punched through where no Italian gun could reach. The telegram from the front is blunt. Requests urgently, heavier main gun, faster vehicle. Matilda too slow and outranged. Production lines back home will grind for another year before an answer arrives in cast steel called Churchill and Valentine. But for now, the Matilda's reign is over. Yet her crews speak differently. When veterans of 7th RTR gather months later at Alexandria, they toast the machine that carried them farther than any doctrine imagined. "She got us there," one sergeant says, raising a tin cup. "And they needed 88s to stop her. That'll do." Outside, the desert shifts under a red dusk, swallowing the bones of tanks, Italian, British, German, indifferent to who rode them. But in the sand near Sidi Barani, you can still find fragments of armor paint, sun-baked and stubbornly bright, the shade factory blueprints called light stone no. Matilda's color. The mark of the tank they laughed at first, and learned to fear last.